Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Robert Murphy.
Thanks everybody for showing up. I don't know about you guys, I was a little worried about coming to an event that's just a bunch of anarchists in one room. I think we're making the FBI's job too easy, but I guess we like to live on the edge, right? I was just at a VIP lunch, and Adam Kokesh was dressed more nicely than I was, right? So that's something, I don't know if he's moving up or I'm letting it slide, but I'm glad you guys showed up. I was a little worried. Ian asked, he said, do you mind being first? And the benefit is I can now get this out of the way and then sit at the bar and just heckle all the other speakers without fear of retaliation. So we call it game theory in economics. All right, I want to open up with, we don't have that much time here, each of the speakers, so we got to get to the point quickly. We're all, I think most people in here are on the same page. I know some people have brought fellow travelers and so forth. I want to open with the thing about the TSA, but I feel like a hypocrite or like I'm living a lie. Just so you guys know, I just want to get this off my chest. I know a lot of you are very passionate about going through the thing. I travel for business a lot. I'm not going to lie, I go through the form scanner. All right, I'm sorry you got, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. And I know the argument, people are like, Bob, don't you know those things mess with your testicles? I can't remember the last time I used my testicles. My only child's 8 years old, you do the math. Okay. So, what I want to talk to you about, you guys probably remember this, the original, the big national opt-out day. Remember that one? It was one of the things, the scanners first were like a thing and everybody really cared about them, even the average person was all mad. And so, of course, the great idea was, let's have a national opt-out day. We'll do it on, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the busiest travel day of the year as far as the airports are concerned. Because if not everybody, but if enough people opt out, what are they going to do, right? Because, they like to say, oh no, you have choice. If you don't want to go through the scanners, you can opt out. So they're trying to convince the citizenry that this isn't an imposition. And the idea was, if we just overwhelm them, what are they going to do? So and so it was, they had the meetups or whatever on Facebook events, and so it was a very well orchestrated, coordinated effort. A few years ago this happened. I'm sure most of you guys remember that. And then I was curious, I wasn't traveling that day, and I was just curious to see what happened. Do you guys remember what happened? It was so successful that there were people all lined up getting ready to opt out, that at all the major airports, the TSA just waved everyone through the standard metal detectors, because they just realized this, everyone's going to miss their flight. We're going to have a lot of pissed off people, grandma and grandpa by themselves on Thanksgiving, so they waved everybody through. So that was hilarious because the whole premise was the metal detectors aren't safe enough. We're putting in these scanners to guarantee your safety. The standard metal ones aren't cut. And the busiest travel day of the year, they just waved everybody through. So the way the media should have reported that would be to say these protesters just totally made the government capitulate. This was an unmitigated success. The protesters got their demands. They didn't have to go through the scanners and they didn't have to get patted down. They won, protesters won, government zero. But the way they described it, they would have some lady at Boston Logan Airport or Chicago O'Hare or whatever saying, a lot of these protesters were lined up ready for this big standoff with the government, TSA, and the protests fizzled. Back to you, Jim. And so they were trying to, because there was no big thing, because the government totally melted away and backed off and waved everybody through. And so because the government was smart and they realized we're not going to go head to head against these people when they have the public on their side. For whatever reason, that thing, having guys see your naked body scan, that pissed people off, and they realized, wait a minute, I shouldn't have to choose between that or getting groped, and that was something that resonated with the general public. And so those of us who've been, in the freedom liberty movement for years, we got everyone's attention with that issue, and we organized something that, actually worked and made the government back off. So the government realized we're not going to take these guys. They have too many people on their side on this one. We need to just surrender, but we won't frame it like that. We'll just wave them through and then frame the issue in terms of the media as that, their protest didn't work like they were hoping. All right, so there's a couple lessons from there. One is, of course, framing the issue that the government is, we joke about how stupid they are and stuff, but the people who are running those things, they're actually very clever. That's why they have so much power. You don't get to be that powerful by being an idiot. They're evil, but they're not stupid, is what I'm saying, right? And the other thing is, if you get the majority of the public on your side on something, the government has to back off. because there's only a small group of them. And I think sometimes we forget that because they have nuclear bombs and they have SWAT teams and things like that, and so they're very intimidating and scary, but they need to use those things to keep everyone in submission because ultimately there's only a small group of them. And so that's why a lot of us stress so much when people say, well, what's your strategy? What do you want to do? And we say education, and that sounds like it's a cliche, and it sounds like it's just a cop-out, and because it's a safe thing to say, but it's true that no matter what your particular view is as to how are we going to get to a freer society, a necessary condition along that path is to get more people to think like you, right? That no matter what you want to do, so some people are real into politics, that's not my thing, but some people are all about, we got a lot of people that think like us, whether at the local level, state level, what have you. Well, the only way that's going to work, obviously, is to educate people. But even if you're thinking, well, no, man, this is going to come down to an armed standoff, and that's where we got to get ready, and we got to get all our equipment and everything. Even if that's what you're thinking, again, the more people on your side and not on the other side pointing guns at you, the better chance you're going to have of that strategy working. Right? Now, my particular thing is I'm not going to worry about how is the end game going to play out, because I just figure the more people who think like me, at some point the state would just collapse of its own weight. Right? And I think that's what we forget a lot, that the state needs the general population to keep it in power. It's not just that the state's there and it's thriving on itself and we have to tear it down. We just have to convince everyone else to stop holding it up, and then it would just fall. Right? If, let's say, 30 million people tomorrow just said, we're not paying income taxes anymore. Right? If that happened, that would be, all right, few tax brokers, good. All right? What would they do? I mean, they couldn't arrest 30 million people. That would cost more than it would be worth to them. See what I'm saying? They need people to be going to work and sending in their money voluntarily. And of course, that word's in quotation marks, but you know what I mean. Right? They can't just go around and hunt every single person out. They can't audit every single person. Everyone literally, and I don't even mean cheating on their tax, cheating. I mean, what if you just fill out their tax form, signed it, and said, yep, according to your system, I owe you $30,000. And I claimed a bunch of deductions and exemptions, and so my employer withheld $500 this year, so I owe you, $25,000, whatever the number is, and I'm not going to send it to you. What are you going to do? What if 30 million people did that? Right? The government would really be in a tough situation. They could print money and so forth, but if investors thought they're not going to have that tax revenue coming in, the dollar would crash. Okay, so my point is, whatever your particular strategy is for how we're going to get to there, getting more people to think like us, to realize you're right, the system is screwed up, that's a necessary step. So that's my career, what I'm focusing on, but I'm encouraging you guys to realize that too, that it makes a difference when you see that the state, it needs people to support it. Particularly with the stuff in Boston, what have they been telling the public? If you see anything, send in your tips, whatever. No matter how many people they got in the FBI, the supercomputers, all the surveillance and stuff, they need people to give them tips. That's the way the government cracks cases, is somebody calls up some citizen in their vocabulary who reports information, and then the government employees go to work on that, right? So they need people to turn them in. The drug war, whether they legalize it formally or not, if just the vast majority of people would never ever in a million years call the cops on somebody because they smelled pot from down the hall, then that effectively would be legalized, right? Whatever the official rules were. So that's what I'm saying, getting the public to think like us and to not think we're nut jobs is an important part of the process. So let me just say a few more words here. Let me just give you two cute little analogies, two thought experiments here, and then you'll see where I'm going with this. So imagine you had the original dream team, for those guys who are talking about the basketball, U.S. men's basketball team from a few years ago, the first time the U.S. went to the Olympics, it's Michael Jordan, all these guys, arguably the best combination of talent that mankind has ever produced as far as the game of basketball is concerned. And imagine the media comes up to them, they stick microphones in their face, and they say, what do you guys are the most amazing basketball players ever, what do you have to say to the rest of us? And they went, you guys disgust us. We cannot believe how much you all suck at basketball. You guys, you're blowing layups here. You guys even know what a pick and roll is, and they're just thoroughly disgusted with 99% of the population because they all suck so much at basketball compared to these guys. That would be weird. People would be horrified if they did that. Or pick a different example if sports isn't your thing, like you assemble the best writers in human history. Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, whoever your particular fan of. Put them in a room, And again, people come up and ask them, what words of wisdom do you have for the rest of us? And they're just like, you guys are awful writers. We can't get over how terrible you are. Do you guys know how to use a semicolon? You know when it's is a possessive, you don't use an apostrophe? What's wrong with you people? Right? That would be freaky if they did that. And why? The first hand, because they would be jerks for talking like that, but also it would be tragic, because obviously somebody at any given point has to be the group of the best basketball players. Some group of people have to be the best writers. And what that means is they're better at that than everyone else is. Everyone else is worse compared to that. You have to share with us, and they said, I am so disgusted at what a bunch of statists everybody is. I cannot believe that you guys are a bunch of sheep who follow in the media, and you're just, oh my God, I'm just sick. I'm just going to go walk on an island because you guys disgust me. Right? You see how it's the same thing. And I have that reaction too. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I'm saying if you can see clearly how crazy that would be with the first two groups, it's the same thing here. That the people in this room, the ones I know, I'm assuming if you're here, it's because you agree with these general viewpoint, we see things that other people cannot see. And instead of being pissed off at the world and just walking around miserable 24/7, it might be healthier for you, and it might help us gain more people if instead you view it as, I have been blessed. I can see things that other people can't. How can I help them to see that instead of just being mad at them? All right. So again, it's like I said, I had this in my past too. I have that natural reaction when you see people just blindly following CNN. So I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just trying to say I think it's healthier for you individually as you go through life to not think like that, and also just to realize, the last thing I want to say here is there was probably some reason that you were lucky too. It wasn't purely just your own merit for how you got to this, what we think of as a higher level of perception or being able to see the truth. Maybe you had an uncle or something that got you into this stuff, right? So there's probably some reason when you think back, how did I start seeing things the correct way or closer to the truth that I think 99% of the rest of people do? There was some person probably that was your gateway. And so instead of being mad at everyone else for not having that person, you can be that person for them, right? So, thanks everybody.